Hi, welcome to Mend. I'm Julie. Today we have Makenna Hatter Paxton with us, and I'm just thrilled that you're here. Hi, Makenna.
Thanks. Hi, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about you and how we met because we were living in the same complex at one point. But I really remember seeing you one time at an event, and I did not know you. I did not know we lived in the same complex, and I just thought you were stunning, and I still do.
Thank you. Thanks. So nice.
Yeah, well, and I say that because, you know, it's part of, I think, something that we want to talk about today, or I should say I know this will be something that we're talking about today is, you know, body image, and in ways that I think as women, we also try and keep up with that. When is the first time you started, I guess, hearing about, or people saying like you're pretty, or you started to, I don't know, I don't want to say identify with that, but when is the first time you started to notice it and maybe it gave you certain feelings you weren't aware of? Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Okay.
I can actually pretty well pinpoint a couple major events in my life where I started to come to this unhealthy / false realization that my value was in how I looked, and that was when I did some modeling when I was a little girl for a sewing company locally in Austin that was selling like kids' clothing patterns, sewing patterns, and the photos are beautiful, and I actually saw some the other day at my grandma's house, but that's really when adults around me started to just constantly and only compliment the way I looked, not like, oh, your artwork's great, or oh, like you solved that math problem just right, or you know,
you're kind.
It was like, oh, you have the prettiest hair and the prettiest eyelashes, and from there, when I was in high school, it got, I would say, the realization like really set in when I was on the drill team at my high school, and I decided to quit for various reasons. The main one being that it wasn't a healthy environment anymore, and the drill team instructor actually told me, "Well, you're just gonna get fat," and that's when. And then I, you know, proceeded to just make choices, or not make choices, but put myself in environments where I was like getting things I felt based on how I looked, and I was only around people who kind of valued me for how I look. I would say that the eating disorders started when I was 17. And it started with, you know, food restricting, anorexia, and then moved into bulimia when I was 18 and 19.
Is there something that you can say caused that? Was there a moment, or was there things leading up to this moment when you decided, you know, I'm going to stop eating as much, or what did that look like? Can you explain it a little bit?
Sure. There were definitely like moments like the drill team instructor incident I was telling you about, but also I think it was like kind of slowly brewing and influencing more and more over time, and getting worse and worse over time. And my experience with food restricting in particular is that I engage in that behavior when I'm stressed out, and I think that it's my way of just having control over something. So I bet if I had a perfect memory and could recount all the times that I was feeling like I didn't have control over my own life, I bet that was when I was at peak food restriction as well. And, you know, I'll be honest, I'm 35 and I still do struggle with food restriction. It's so much better and so much more manageable. And it helps to be honest with people like you about it. But that's definitely a coping mechanism that I have had for several decades.
Yeah, I do too. In fact, in some ways I'm doing it right now, but it doesn't feel as unhealthy as it used to feel.
I'm so happy to hear that, and I never thought I'd be to this point. That's a much healthier place where I'm doing that kind of thought pattern a lot less. I never thought I'd be this healthy with it. So I'm so relieved and so happy that I'm in a place where it's a lot more manageable. But I definitely still struggle with it, and guilt as well. Guilt, like, you know, today I ate fast food for lunch because that's what I wanted and that's all I had time for. And I, like, right now feel guilty about it. That's like a residual eating. I would put that in the same category as an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a residual thing that I'm still dealing with.
Sure. And I had, my therapist told me that I didn't have an eating disorder, but I had disordered eating. And so I think that maybe guilt kind of goes along with that.
For sure.
In my mind. But yeah, going back to whenever you started restricting, did you start seeing a therapist, or when did anybody notice? Did you lose a significant amount of weight?
People that were close to me, close family, didn't see it as a problem, or maybe weren't even aware of it because I wasn't eating in front of them. I was very strategically eating at, you know, for example, times when they weren't eating, so that I could be like, well, I'm gonna only have this one, you know, half of an apple and like some celery, and then would tell them like, yeah, I ate dinner. So that was going on early on, and then I moved out when I was 18 and was living by myself. It was incredibly easy, unfortunately, to be anorexic and bulimic on my own because I had nobody around.
Were you working out during those times as well? To an obsessive amount, do you think, or was your workouts?
Yeah, I think so, and it was mainly cardio, and it was kind of in the same way, like, oh, I feel guilty about eating fast food. It was like if I didn't do it, if I went a day without it, I would be like really upset and decide, well, I don't deserve dinner now. You know.
Yeah, so it's amazing how hard we can be on ourselves.
And it's also like I'm saying it like I was talking to myself, and it was like really a conscious thing, but it was almost like subconscious, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean I agree with you there, because I feel like anytime that I'm talking to myself in a negative way, or I'm doing things out of addiction or in any other way, I don't believe it's like my true self.
Yeah.
I believe it's my subconscious self, and I'm just going through any sort of motion to not feel pain.
Yeah.
Like, take away this pain, whether that is inhaling food or taking away food, because then maybe it's okay, then maybe I should feel the pain, or, you know, it just, just trying not to feel, and that, and controlling food for me was also another way of, you know, trying to smooth over any mental health issues I was having at the time.
Yeah.
When did you start to seek help at some point?
I did, but not until my mid-20s.
Okay. What took you to that?
I realized that it was not sustainable to be doing what I was doing. I was to a point where I was like, there was a vending, I used to work in an office setting, and there was a vending machine downstairs, and like my lunch would be like one granola bar from the vending machine. And at that time I was also like keeping a journal, like a written journal of what I was eating. And as much as like that like was a behavior that I kind of just, you know, that was like my comfort blanket almost. And as much as I was doing it, I knew there's no way it was sustainable long term. And I'm not talking about like I could literally die, and, you know, from not feeding myself and nourishing myself, but just I was like, I can't keep this up. I'm not going to live long. I'm not going to live a full life. That's what prompted me to seek help. And there just happened to be a really good therapist whose niche is helping people with eating disorders, like one block from my office.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Were you internally feeling like your body was not functioning the way it should anymore?
I wasn't feeling it until I wasn't recognizing the sign. It was happening, but I wasn't recognizing those signs until after I started working with my therapist, and she, pretty quickly was like, "You realize that you literally your body does not understand how to be hungry anymore, and you don't know when you're really hungry." And so, like, maybe someone who hasn't experienced what we've experienced, like they feel hungry and they eat, and it's like a normal hunger sensation. I just have no idea, and until this day, I don't know what that feels like. The way that I know that I need to eat food is, well, I try to have like it's noon, I need to eat lunch. But I just go from like not eating to I feel like I'm gonna throw up, like sick. And even though I'm like I feel definitely far past bulimia, my body is still like out of whack with the, telling my brain when to eat, what a healthy way of eating is, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that any of that had to do with the pressure of trying to maintain what people say about you? Like, do you ever feel like being thin is being pretty? Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I was a kid, it was less that one particular modeling experience, and probably more all the adults around me constantly being like, one of the big things was my long eyelashes, and my hair. I used to have really long hair, and that's really what started to like solidify this idea. And for me, it was like a hard truth, like because I'm visually attractive on the outside, like that's my thing now, and that's what makes me important in the world. And then I actually did do some modeling when I was 18, and that didn't help matters either. I'm so excited to see that we are now in a time where we're talking more about mental health. But I'm still, I call myself an elder millennial, and I feel like my generation, or maybe it's just this part of the world, or I don't know, that still was not discussed when I was growing up.
Yeah, not my home either. Do you think it does have a part to do, though, with eating disorders?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, it does. I guess I shouldn't speak for other people, but especially the food restriction, like I mentioned earlier, that's like so directly tied to anxiety and stress. And, not coincidentally, when I've been at my lowest weight, which was close to 100, and I'm 5'6", so that's rail thin, it was always between romantic relationships. Oh. Like I'd end a relationship, and then, it was a lot. Not only was it easier to food restrict because now I'm single and I'm living by myself, but the stress of it, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to control this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so many times, too, and I don't want to speak for you, but for me, when I was in those relationships, I was getting my self-worth from that relationship, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, I'm worthy if that person loves me.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then I'm not, you know?
I can relate to that. What I think kind of was the catalyst for pulling me away from this was actually painting. So I've been a painter for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Well, and I know, but, I'd love for you to share it with our
Sure.
audience.
Yeah, do you want me to just share it now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I worked in an office environment for about 12 years. And then I always had wanted to be more creative and invest more time in like learning how to draw and learning how to paint. And I was always artistic growing up. But when I was 18, I slipped into a really pretty good office job and just never made time to learn a creative outlet. And so eventually I left the office gig and started up at the community college here taking art classes, and then transferred to Texas State University, from where I'm about to graduate with my degree in painting. And from there I want to get my master's in painting. But yeah, I really credit learning how to paint and falling in love with painting as a big reason why I have my eating disorders a lot more under control.
I do think purpose is important And it's not something that you always expect. I mean, I did get my higher education, my master's in counseling, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a therapist. I didn't know, but I never thought in a million years I would be talking, you know, with people in a camera and or doing doing it this way. Same thing, like you always felt artistic when you were younger, and now here you are, you're an artist, and you know, you're giving yourself to the world, and just so I do think it's important.
It's important for me, for sure, and it's important for me to feel fulfilled. I know that's maybe not important to everybody, but for me it is, and that's what painting does.